Hi, I'm Demi, founder and CEO of You're the Book Press and editor-in-chief of South Pub Magazine. Here in the studio today for a little bit of a person behind the author series.
Dun, 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 dun.
Excellent. I love a musical man.
I'm Paul. I'll be Paul Schaefer to your David Letterman.
I'm digging the hat. So, I understand that you are not only an author, a writer, a former copy editor, but you've got mad skills in the woodworking department.
Absolutely.
What have you built?
I have built, in fact, I just finished building a desk for my wife.
Ooh, happy lady.
Yeah, absolutely. She just started writing herself. She was so inspired by what I was doing. Either that or she looked at me and said, I can do better than this. She is, but she has spent her life telling stories, and she is actually working on a cardboard table in the corner upstairs while I'm down in my office underneath the staircase. And she wanted a desk, and she got, it's a sheet of plywood, but it's stained and polyurethane. It has a couple of legs underneath, so it almost feels like it's floating, and it's in the corner, mounted on braces, and she's been using it for the last week and digging it.
That's super. As a writer yourself, somebody who probably has a lot of books, do you have any other things made out of wood?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I have this... I could just go everywhere and not talk about the bookcases, because we also made a DVD case and case for my movies. But what we're actually talking about is I made bookcases for my basement. And this is where we have about 7,000 or 8,000 books. When my wife and I got together, we actually put together our libraries, and she read a lot in nonfiction, and I read a lot in fiction, and she reads a lot of science fiction. I read a lot of fantasy, and I think we ended up throwing out like 10 books.
So you have a whole library in the basement.
Absolutely.
Then.
We have about 22 bookcases. And so I had to come up with a mass-producible idea really quick because we were tired of putting them on the floor in boxes.
You don't say.
Yeah. So it was a matter of cutting 3/4-inch sheets of plywood for the sides and drilling slots and buying bookshelves from the Lowe's and cutting them in half and sliding them in and putting them together. And now we have side by side by side by side. Like I said, 22 bookcases.
And now you have enough books of your own to fill a whole shelf, don't you?
I know. In the last 5 years, we put out about 7 books through the Peschel Press imprint. And we're going to be putting out more as well.
That's fantastic. Tell us a little bit about the first time you thought you might want to be a writer.
I'm not really sure. It's just something that's always been a part of me. It's just I've always loved reading, and I've always loved reading mysteries and fantasy stories, and I loved to write, but I was never really much motivated to. I think part of it is also I have a very strong writer's block about putting myself out there. So part of my journey has not been to just say, I'm just going to put out a book after book after book after book, but it's also, what do I want to put out? How do I get myself to want to put out stuff? And that's why my first book, which I sold to Penguin, Writers Gone Wild, started 15 years before, when I was starting to collect stories about writers to put in a file cabinet. And I sort of thought about the book idea, and I'd play with it and put it away. And in the mid-90s, when there's websites coming up and personal blogs, the idea kind of grew to be able to do something to put material out. And I had all this material about writers, about George Bernard Shaw affair with a married woman, and Ernest Hemingway throwing meat at his wife during an argument, and Norman Mailer stabbing his wife. You can see there's a common thread in this.
You like the brutal guys. What can I say?
Well, there was all the other things as well. Of course, there's a nice Nin and Henry Miller and their affair, and how
every writer's dysfunction.
Well, that was part of my journey, actually, is to look at these writers and think, how did they do it? How could they do it when they're alcoholics, when they're sex maniacs, when they're jail fiends, when they're plagiarists and robbers and all these other things? I'm pretty normal except for my neuroses. I can write like that.
And you're right. My next question was going to be, what's the neurotic side of Bill?
don't know, actually.
I'm glad you haven't found it yet, and I'm real glad for your wife.
Absolutely. It's been 22 years and still going strong. So I'd like to think that there's something going on there.
Can I ask a little bit about the process of getting published with Penguin?
Sure.
What was that like?
It started with, with the book, with Writers Gone Wild, I finally got tired of it. I think that's where fatigue finally comes in, where I was, doing this for 15 years, and I wrote a proposal and sent it off to a couple of agents, 4 agents in all. They threw it back, and I said, well, screw this.
Oh, I think you have to get triple-digit rejections before you've really earned the...
You're absolutely right. No, seriously, you're absolutely right, because I finally got sick of doing this kind of dragging. I was collecting material, and I started putting material up on my website. And so the rule for me then was trick myself. Because I'd say I put 2 up on a week, 3 up a week. I just put stuff up. And then within 6 months, I had half the book written. And fortunately, I was a member of Penn Writers, which is a great writers organization.
Absolutely.
And Jonathan Mayberry, who is a great writer. He's going to be at the conference next year. He's out in California now writing zombie scripts or doing lots of things with television things. He actually gave a talk at a Penn Writers conference, and he said, I have a proposal. This is a nonfiction proposal. I used it to sell my books. Give me your email, and I'll send it to anyone. And that was like first thing, boom. So I had the proposal, and I swapped all the information out. So I ended with I finally had a template to do.
Right.
And then I said, okay, I'll just start sending it to agents. I will do this is the other thing, set a limited goal.
Okay.
Okay, and within your line, I did. I made a list of agents, and I said, I'm just going to send it to 100 agents.
So this is good. So in the same way, I'm just going to put up a couple of chapters.
Yeah.
I'm just going to put up 3 chapters a week. I'm just going to query.
Yeah, 100 agents. I'll find out then. I found out for sure what kind of response I'll get. And this is an age, of course, I had to email synopses, I had to email the complete proposal, I had to email a query letter.
And of course, everybody has different requirements.
They all had something different. I had to mail some as well. And it wasn't until about number 34 that I actually got an offer from an agent.
That's pay dirt. 34 is good.
That was it, yeah. And if I hadn't done that, I never would have gotten to 34. And she sold the book. And the book came out. The book's still in print. The sales were not good enough, and they said, we're fine with 1 book from you.
So, but then you kept publishing. Tell us about Peschel Press. How did that evolve?
Yeah, Peschel Press started with my other passion, which was for mystery stories, particularly those of Dorothy Sayers. I was a big fan of her books, and I started doing a website devoted to her annotations, to explaining her. She was an Oxford-trained. She went to Oxford at a time when few women did. She was a Christian apologist. She was a translator of Dante. She did all these things, and she also wrote mystery novels and stories featuring Lord Peter Wimsey. They were set in London, and they had enormous dollops of British culture. She quoted French, Latin, Greek. She referred to classical authors and philosophers. She described things in London that you needed a map to find. And I just started, I was curious. I had natural curiosity for this sort of thing, so I started finding out what these things were and then putting it on the site, which is still there today, still incomplete. And I went through this, and finally I went through to do Whose Body, which was her first book, and realized that it was out of copyright in the United States and most of the world, and that with tools like Amazon's CreateSpace and Kindle, I could actually publish it as a book.
That's phenomenal.
And I thought, wow, I've always wanted to do that, to actually design a book cover. All these book covers I designed. I did all the editing on them. My wife edited my books as well. There's a lot of love and a lot of effort put into these books.
What are your favorite tools for building books? From the typesetting? I'm
very cheap. I am very, very, very cheap.
We're frugal here.
Yeah, well, you're frugal, I'm cheap. That's where it boils down to.
Kindred spirits, different names.
Yeah, all of these were built using Word 2007, Photoshop 2, which is available free from their website, I also used Fireworks 3, which I bought in 1995.
I was going to say.
Yeah, that I still use that. Windows 7, obviously. Mm-hmm. There's a PDF converter called PDF 995 that is useful because it actually translates the Word text into the right size pages to send up to CreateSpace. Mm-hmm. All of these were made from, of course, public domain art, scanned in, colored by me. I actually did one for the Mysterious Affair at Styles. That's this poison bottle. And I actually designed the label and stuck it on the bottle. And all you do is you sit there with all your filters in the back, and you drop little colored bits of ink in there, and you take a lot of pictures, and then maybe one of them gives you the right swirl of poison that is like, yes, that's the mood I want.
That's fantastic. I like that DIY approach and being fearless in some regards.
Yeah, there is. There is a certain amount of fearlessness in doing something that I don't have anybody else looking at until I'm absolutely done. And that's why for the Secret Adversary, this is actually the main piece. All this piece of art is taken from a website that was Russian movie posters from the socialist era, the 1920s. And I collected a whole bunch of things. Yeah, because it's about a woman in trouble, so the face with the two colors on there is there. The only thing was the ship, because the Lusitania sank. And that's how the book opens, with the Lusitania sinking. So there was a postcard online commemorating it, and did that as well. And then I put it all together, finding the type, the Russian type, all of it public domain. I'm trying to be very scrupulous about that. If I'm doing this for money, I don't want to cheat other people out. And as a matter of fact, the early Punch parodies, I actually contacted Punch in England and arranged to buy the rights to about half the stories in there, because they are under copyright. And, it cost me a pretty penny, but on the other hand, I got a book that I wanted. The rights were about $3,000 to do that. It's the only time.
Then you got it your way.
Well, yeah, and it's what I wanted, and I got a very good product out of it. And as a matter of fact, this is now for sale at the Mysterious Press bookstore in New York City. They actually contacted me to buy copies of it for the store.
Kudos to you.
Yeah, I like validation.
Well, you are DIY fearless. I know you've also done some audio recording, video recording of your own. What was that like?
I like experimenting with that. I experimented with podcasts for Writers Gone Wild, and a book I want to put out called Hollywood Gone Wild. So they're available on iTunes. There's only like 7 or 8 episodes. And I also made videos for my YouTube channel, reading portions of the books of Writers Gone Wild. Those were experiments. Those were enabling me to get my hands on the equipment, to see what works, but also to see how much time is involved. And that's the big thing to learn about self-publishing. If you decide to go self-publishing or to pursue a publishing contract, you can't choose New York Publishing. They choose you. Okay, so all you can do is choose whether you want to do that. There's advantages and disadvantages to both. So I think the bigger advantages is either working with a small publisher that you can work with, or to do it yourself, because you get a lot more control over what you want to do and how you do it. And also, in a way, you end up getting a potential for more money as well per book.
You also get a chance to meet some influential people. I have a photo I'm going to share with our readers here.
Really?
Yeah. Were you at maybe Midtown Scholar? Where was this photo taken?
Oh, yeah. That was when I was working for the Patriot News. I was doing book reviews and features for them, in addition to copy editing and page design. And I got to talk with Mayor Poppenfuss, back when he was just bookstore owner, Poppenfuss, because they published a collection of Patriot News columns by one of our columnists from like the 40s and 50s and 60s about Harrisburg. And so I got a chance to talk to him as part of the feature for the newspaper.
And then I have one more clip of you I want to share with our viewers today. You're in a little bit of a historical costume here. What's that?
Yes, again, fearlessness.
You a
it will take you anywhere. No, not at that time. There was another one. I was a member of the Society for Creative Anachronism, so I actually got up in medieval costume, but I didn't want to bring that one in. That was a little too embarrassing.
It can be embarrassing.
No, in South Carolina, they were filming The Patriot, the Mel Gibson movie, outside of Charlotte, North Carolina, and I applied to be an extra.
And this is you.
And this is me without the beard. They did not like Victorian beards in a Revolutionary War movie for some reason. So they had that. So yes, they put us in there, and I took pictures on the set and ended up writing a front page story for the newspaper. And that was definitely a brush with fame, because I never quite realized just how much people actually cared about that sort of thing. And I ended up being interviewed for the local cable television, and for like a couple of days everybody was like, wow, there's Bill. What was it like seeing Mel Gibson? And you could feel my head slowly expanding. I was actually rather grateful.
You needed a different hat.
I needed we're going to need a bigger hat, yes. I was kind of grateful when that kind of faded, so that the ego can kind of go back down to manageable proportions.
Well, it's been so exciting getting to meet you and learn a little bit of what makes you tick. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thank you, Demi.